Welcome back to the channel, everybody. This will be video, I guess we'll call it video 2 of the GT350 repair, build, whatever you want to call it. Don't really know where I'm going to end up with this car, but in video 1 I kind of introduced you to it and showed you some of the body damage that there was. So in this video we're going to kind of pull the headlight, pull the bumper, fender, you know, and kind of really see how cracked up stuff is inside of there. Alright, so I got the headlight out. It's a little bit more cracked up than I originally thought. You can see this is broken. All the lights and everything still work, so that's good. You could see previously this little top tab was cracked but still hanging on. The back here, this tab came off, but if you look at it, let's get a little light on here. It fits, where is it, like perfectly into that where it broke. So I can kind of glue that on. Like I mentioned in the first video, the repair estimate for this car, an OEM headlight is like $1,380 for one headlight. So I'm fine gluing it and making it work. In here, you know, we knew this was cracked. This little tab right here, again, fine, just putting a little glue on that will be fine. Some of these brackets in here might be kind of pushed in a little bit, but like I was mentioning in the first video, when the bumper, you know, is kind of pushed up where it needs to be, you can see how even just like a little hit right here can come in and hit this oil cooler, and that's what happened with this thing and why the engine was ran without oil. So obviously the new oil cooler is in, so yeah, we're looking all right so far. Nothing too crazy. All right, so what I'm gonna work on now, this tab right here is supposed to be out pretty much 90 degrees. The problem is, well, not really problem, but a little bit of difficulty is the air box kind of covers me from getting behind it. So I'm probably just gonna get some pliers to pull it out and sneak my hand behind it to get this bolt out, take this one out, because this bracket is supposed to be pretty flat right here. So when all that kind of comes out and flattens out, this fender will kind of make it out to where it needs to be, and then I can kind of worry about gaps to the hood and the fender and all that stuff. So you can see I pulled this tab out behind here straight and kind of rebent this to where it needs to go. Something interesting is this bolt right here, you can't see it, but the factory actually slots it about a ½ inch. You can see how much movement is there, and if I move that, you can see how much it moves the fender out. So, you know, when Ford built this thing, I'm sure all S550s are probably pretty similar. If you have a little bit of a tire rubbing issue, could be a quick little tip just to kind of loosen that bolt, slide it out a tiny bit more. But yeah, so now that that's kind of straight and this is kind of where it needs to go, we're gonna, I'll just do this now while I'm here, I guess. So that little plastic bracket that's in there, it does clip. I'm trying to do this sort of one-handed while holding the thing. You can see how far off this is, right? But when plastic gets hit, it kind of bends and bounces to like where it should be, while aluminum doesn't. It'll kind of take a bend and set there. So we know that the bumper is actually good, and you can see this little bend right here. So we know that this fender kind of needs to actually roll in a little bit, and you can see we got a high spot here and a high spot here if you kind of watch the reflection around it. So we're kind of getting our edges and our body lines kind of where we want them before we go ahead and pull this fender, so that way, you know, then it's just flat metal work at that point. All right, so I'm just working through my steps, and you can see I got this looking better, not perfect, because where the fender bolts to this little tab right here, you can see it's kind of like rolled in and down a little bit. So if that came up, try and do this one-handed again, you can kind of see how it'll change this gap a little bit. So I don't really want to finalize this until I kind of work this. And to get that kind of where it needs to go, we can kind of just mirror this side. So we know it definitely has to roll up a little bit. So, you know, again, just working through my steps to get everything to line up. The other thing I'll do while I have the camera going, I'm going to set you guys up here. You can tell that the hood is kind of rolled in right here and not really putting too much weight or pressure on it. You can see how much I can bend this to like where it needs to go. So it's kind of just how cars are made nowadays, especially this being aluminum. You basically just have to like bend stuff to where it kind of, you know, all lines back up. So, you know, just keep, I'm just going to keep knocking stuff out. All right, so we're starting to look really good right along here. If you kind of look at the arc of the, you know, the fender as it goes around, we got rid of those high spots for the most part. The bumper clips in pretty good. We'll go to the other side in a second. Look at that. And then if you look at that, I guess the tires are making it look a little bit funny, but you can see we're like pretty much dead on. And then we got this tab up on this side, so it looks very, very similar. So what we're gonna do now is try and straighten this hood corner. Now if you look, see this crease right here? If this crease weren't there, that means that, you know, this whole corner of the hood needs to kind of go up, because remember that crease right there? If you look, it's not on this side at all. So we're gonna work on the hood, and I got a few 2x4s. I'll show you kind of how we used to do this. Like I said, it's been years since I've done body work. And again, since this car was written off by the insurance company, that's why I was able to get a deal on it. You know, I can make this hood and this fender and headlight and everything line up, but you know, if I was the original owner or the one who bought this car, yeah, I would want a new fender and a new hood. But this is kind of just, you know, to get everything lined up looking good on this car. So we got to go to a solid part of the car, obviously. And there's also like a little buckle right on the top of the hood right here. So you can see as I just put, man, I'm probably only putting 30, 40 pounds of weight on it. And I brought it out, there it is. Okay. I'm sure we're still low. Okay, yeah. So the hood isn't even down, and you can see how we're kind of high to the fender here, low to the fender up here. So it'd be nice to kind of roll this corner out without messing up the paint underneath. So that way when I do finally body work and paint the hood, you know, the underside will be a little bit nicer. Alright, so I'm going to keep working this, and we'll pick up when I get it lined up. Alright guys, we're getting there. Tinkering with this, trying to get it lined up, and it's bringing back memories, trying to get body panels to line up. But what I'm doing now, I feel as though the hood is better than this fender. So what I did was, the hood is latched right now, and if we go to the bumper, right to that corner, call it just over 4.5, not even 4 5/8. So then we come to this side, right off of the bumper to the hood, and we're just under 4.5. So like this bit of the hood might need to come up not even 1/8 of an inch. So that's pretty much there. These fenders, you can see how much movement there is in them. At this point, pretty much what's left is to kind of roll the tip of this fender down, get this out a little bit, but you can see we're kind of a little bit high. So I think that, you can't see it now, but that bracket in there, I think I may have pulled the fenders up just a little bit too much. So the whole fender kind of needs to come down a tiny bit, and we'll be just about there. We'll go ahead and get the tabs glued on the headlight so the headlight can go back in. But yeah, we're actually getting there. You know, for this first stage, you're just getting everything lined up. All right, so we're switching gears real quick to get this headlight prepped and bonded. So you can see how I sanded around where it's going to, you know, glue this tab back on. I didn't want to like overly sand it to lose that like, oh, where is it? How the heck does this go? That like positive, you know, key of how it just kind of sits in there. So that way we know it'll line up fine. The top one, kind of the same thing. Sanded around it with 80 grit, wiped it all down with acetone real well. And we're gonna use this stuff. So, you know, it's in the gun. This 3M panel bonding adhesive, 8115. This stuff is very, very similar to JB Weld, which kind of just about everybody knows what JB Weld does. It's what I have on hand, that's why I'm using it. JB Weld would probably work, or somebody out there might have an even better option specifically for what type of plastic this is, but this will be fine. You know, we're not going for any car shows or anything. We just need those tabs to kind of be, you know, back to where they belong, and hold the headlight in position without being like pointing up in the air or anything. So yeah, let's get this bonded, and then back to metal work. All right, I don't know if I've ever seen such a thing of beauty, but you can see my clamps are kind of holding this tab, you know, however it needs to go. A little extra glue around it, give it a little more support. And then same thing with this one. Since it broke like perfectly, it sits where it needs to, so just a little bit of tape to hold it into place. So yeah, we're gonna throw this in the oven to speed it up and get back to doing the last little bit of you know, metal work, lining up those body panels. All right guys, so I'm wrapping up for the night and we're looking pretty good. This clamp is on here because there's actually like a double piece of metal back here that I kind of bent out of the way to metal work the crease that went right across here. So obviously it's wavy, but you can see, you know, the metal itself is much closer to where it needs to be. This is pretty good. I'm not super happy with this little bit of the bumper, but I know how these little plastic tabs and everything, it's like they don't really hold it too positively anyways, so I can tinker with that a tiny bit. If we close the hood, you can see that our gap looks pretty good the whole way. It tightens up a tiny bit. Let's try and get a little bit of light on here. So the gap looks pretty good the whole way. I did a little bit of metal work on the hood. Couldn't quite get behind this corner, but you know, got rid of a big crease that was right in here. So, and then the measurement from the corner of the hood to here, I got like dead even with the other side. So, you know, I'm pretty happy with, you know, how all this curve looks and everything. Once I get the headlight in, that'll kind of finalize everything. Because as you can see, the headlight kind of sits like under the edge of the fender and it sits in here. So it's like the headlight doesn't necessarily define this edge perfectly like it does on some cars. So that almost makes it a little bit easier. But like I was mentioning, the gap on that side, this one looks good, looks good, looks good. And see how it tightens up in the front? So the fact that mine ever so slightly tightens up right here, but looks pretty good the whole way, I'm happy with it. So yeah, we're gonna wrap up for the day. Tomorrow, I'm gonna pull that headlight out, get the headlight back in, and kind of get this all like buttoned back up. So that way this whole corner is at least kind of everything where it needs to be. All right, so picking up where we left off yesterday, the epoxy cured around this tab and this lower tab here, so you can see solid enough for what we need to do. And I think I went over this yesterday, but the general metal work is done. You can kind of see how I kind of tapped out. So the rough metal is kind of where it needs to be. Something I just found out on this car is this front corner has actually been repaired before. As I'm working it, I doubt they'll show up in the video, but you can almost see very faint scratches like underneath of the paint, like the original primer or bodywork. I doubt that'll show up, but putting the headlight back in, you can see if we can see it. There's actually overspray right on that top corner right there of the headlight. So that tells me that this front corner is actually, this is the second time it's been hit. So, all right, so as you can see, we got the headlight in. We're gonna go over a few things to kind of wrap up this first installment of the bodywork on the GT350. So, as mentioned earlier, I was able to get the gaps where I'm happy with them. Remember, you know, see how ours gets a tiny bit tighter right there. Same thing on this side, you know, the untouched side. The headlight on ours looks pretty good. If you take note of this kind of, I guess there's like a little bit of a gap between the bumper and the headlight here, and you look at how this side is lower. A tiny bit of, you know, we sort of have a gap here. Whoops. So you can kind of see we have a very similar gap right up in here. But see how we're a little bit tighter right here? I still have to play with that plastic tab back there because this, it's not really staying quite where I want it, but good enough for now. You know, but the rest of the headlight and everything, you know, all kind of looks really good. So, you know, so at this point, part 2 will pick up where this one leaves, doing the actual like Bondo and bodywork and priming. I'm gonna sub out the finishing paintwork though. I don't do paintwork. The reason I'm gonna kind of not do that right now is I have a million other things going on. We're actually gonna be moving the shop in about 2 weeks from now. So we're gonna kind of, it might be a little while before you see much else about this car. So one thing I am gonna do is start a playlist specifically for this GT350. So you can kind of follow along with this, just in case you're not into like the composites or moving the shop or the racing videos and, you know, stuff like that. If you learned something, please give this video a thumbs up. Also consider hitting that subscribe button down below so you can keep up to date with everything we're going to be doing. As always, guys, thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you in the next one.